Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, will Chris Level offer an apology to those disenchanted by the Red Raider path to the Sweet 16? It's a semi-peek at Arkansas and plenty of shots at all of our enemies.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And thanks as always for making us your first listen. Today's episode brought to you by the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay with us for the Armada Team of the Week later on in this episode. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you once again as we near a Sweet 16 collision with the Razorbacks of Arkansas. And we will begin to peel back the layer to that bacon onion on this episode. Won't be a full look, but a semi-Arkansas look I want to get to before we're out of here, just to kind of tease you, wet the whistle a little bit before we dive in on the next couple of episodes. And it includes kind of a question that we were sort of kicking it around that I think is sort of interesting in the context of John Calipari. What type of role he's in now in Fayetteville compared to the context of his career really everywhere else, or at least most recently in Lexington, Kentucky. Cal is an underdog. Is it actually a thing? The points might tell you that, but does reality tell you that? We'll get to that in just a moment. I also want to get to what sounds like some are demanding to be an apology from, I don't know, you, me, Red Raiders anywhere, everywhere, as it relates to our path to the Sweet 16. Are we to take it back because of some okay, I'll get to that in just a moment. I don't want to get triggered right out of the gates. Out of the gates, Chris, I would like to get to the lay of the land as we sit here now at the moment to catch our breath following another round. When it comes to some conference beef, you know, it seems like it's at the forefront now in a way that it never has been before as far as the obligation to take some pride in your league. You and I have talked about it. It can be a bit of a struggle, at least speaking personally as a Red Raider. It's TTVE pretty much for life, I think. Us versus everybody. I hate all y'all. I'm rooting for the Red Raiders. That's about all I got. But it feels a little bit different now as so many things are on the line nationally. And I don't know, have you, like me, maybe taken more of an interest in some conference tournament standings through the first couple of rounds? Is it even on the radar?
Well, you know, it's obviously been well documented how many SEC teams got into this tournament, and now how many have advanced to the Sweet 16. I think what's interesting is if you look at where all the teams in the Sweet 16 were at in a conference, say in the last 3 years. You know, Houston was in the American, Arizona was in the Pac-12. I mean, if you dig down a little deeper, there's I think 6 or 7 conferences represented as opposed to just the four power conferences. So this is part of the conference bloat of realignment and these big giant conferences. Well, that's the way this is probably going to continue to work. More of these conferences are going to get more teams in just because there's more teams in their conference, and on it goes. But I think that you had 7 teams in from the Big 12, 4 of them are in the Sweet 16 percentage wise. I mean, I think you're at, in a good spot there. It's the top 4 teams in your standing. I think it's unfortunate that Iowa State wasn't able to advance, mainly because they have a Chance McMillan scenario without Keyshawn Gilbert. They're not getting him back. I think there's obviously a better than good chance that you will see Chance McMillan. We'll get into that later, but was I paying attention and rooting for? Is that kind of what you're asking me? Maybe, yeah. And was I paying attention to the Big 12 schools? Absolutely. I mean, we saw Houston up close again. I mean, I feel like I watched them every game in Kansas City. There they are in Wichita. Malik Wilson came over and talked to me while he was warming up before his game versus the Zags. Congratulated myself and, said good luck to the Red Raiders, and on it went. And so, it's hard not to root for that young man. I'm not saying I'm sitting there rooting for Houston. I do have respect for Houston, all that. But, yeah, I find myself in this weird solar system where maybe I'm paying attention to your league and kind of rooting for. I mean, I got no love for Caleb Love, okay, for Arizona, but was I rooting for him to beat Oregon? Yeah, I like Tommy Lloyd. I think he does a damn good job. There's a lot of kids on that team that I think are good players. Caleb Love he's a little much for me. He says a bit too much. I think that Duke
He's a little much for Oregon too, by the way.
Yeah. Duke may be able to quiet him down a little bit, so that run may be short. But yeah,
I find myself rooting for Duke in that one. I got to be honest.
you will be rooting for
No,
Duke?
I don't find myself rooting for Duke in that one. It is Duke after all.
Yeah, but I have paid attention, sure. And what's weird is that there will be a lot of narratives written and stated and all that, like big picture type stuff about how the league did, and then you'll carry it over into next year, and then you'll look back into the fall. The sport is so different. The sport is so year to year. The rosters are so different year to year. It's hard to realistically make too many big picture statements. I think that you have to go with coaches, and I guess you can factor in some history, but it's so meshed into different leagues and newer leagues and all these things that it's like we can't sit here and say, well, the Big 12 for the last 10 years have been, well, you can, but there's three different versions of the conference that you're saying over the last 10 years, three different versions. So
I sort of, though, if I'd boil it down to five, Chris, I think the version that we have now just lost two members that weren't doing a lot anyway on a basketball front.
Fair.
Just because Oklahoma, UT, weren't necessarily carrying the banner in some recent seasons. So anyway, it's on my radar too. I still am finding it much easier, much more natural to enjoy the schadenfreude of rooting for the demise of our enemies elsewhere. So I don't know if I'd still call it like Big 12 pride that's motivating it, but it's definitely a distaste for those in Bryan College Station that led me to feel like I'd like to see that again. I enjoyed seeing them bounce. Bring them on back and see if we can double eliminate them in the same weekend. Just amazing. And the Longhorns, let's see, I'm trying to think back to the coaching timeline. The one they just fired, was this the one that they were proud of meeting in Plainview and taking from? No. That was one they already got rid of. This was the next one they're now getting rid of. And at the same time, Tech is, headed to the Sweet 16. I'm just trying to piece everything together so I know how to feel about everything as far as rooting interest. But
yeah, the guy they just fired took Texas to the Elite Eight 3 years ago in his first year when he kind of took over, if you will.
Worth a lifetime contract to me.
That's right. And now 2 years later, it's like, hey man, appreciate it.
I've still got some old flames that won't be put out, I don't think, really ever. But I'm trying to come around to rooting for others in the Big 12 to do well. I didn't like it that Iowa State was just
no showed, man.
I mean, just
that, total.
All right, I'm just curious, and I'd be curious to hear from those in the YouTube comments out there how you're feeling about the resumes, I guess, league to league so far. The percentage is on the side of the Big 12, but I still think, Chris, we're only a portion through this tournament with the bigger prizes still out there to grab. Doesn't matter so far. If you've got some large percentage one way or another conference-wise representing, say, the Final Four, or obviously depending upon what the national title game could look like, all the crowing is still out there for whatever conference to do, depending on these results. And I bring it up because it's a little more interesting to me given the Big 12 timeline the last two seasons. Very well marketed regular season last year, probably the narrative that you came up short in the postseason a year ago. This season, the most well-marketed league in the regular season, obviously the SEC. But to this point, maybe the Big 12 is actually earning some things back in the postseason. I don't know. So kind of an interesting turn of events, regular to postseason over the last couple of years. We'll see if it continues the same way.
Yeah, and like what's crazy is that we're just talking about the SEC and the Big 12 here mainly, right. Because obviously the ACC's got one team left, and then there's 4 Big 10 teams left as well. But in the Big 12, nobody from a seeding standpoint, it's been what it was supposed to be theoretically. Okay, yeah. The top 4 teams in your league, they have moved on. I mean, I guess you can get into the BYU beating Wisconsin was a mini upset or whatever. But and then you look at the SEC, they've got 7 teams that have moved on. Really, only one team, and it's the aforementioned Aggies that you tossed out there, and Buzz Williams, that they were probably on paper supposed to move on, but everybody else has moved on like they were supposed to. So who has lost is the lower and mid to lower end teams in these leagues. That's who didn't advance.
Wait, so you're saying kind of the Aggies almost to themselves are the example of underachiever this time around? I just want to make sure I'm understanding the context.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
That's what it sounded like.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Okay, just another interesting note maybe to throw. I appreciate the clarity in that picture you paint there.
And you're going to have to go through the SEC in San Francisco. More than likely, this is just how this is going to work. I think there's a lot of people that feel like Maryland can absolutely beat Florida, but more than likely, okay, you're probably going to have to go through the SEC to get to San Antonio, and I'm more than okay with that. This is the way this was going to work. When you got 16 left and 7 are from one league, there was really no path where it was going to be anything other than that. So at some point, and maybe that was going to be when you got to San Antonio. I don't know if you could make it that far, but that's the way this thing is going to go. So and if push comes to shove, if you find yourself rooting for Houston to beat this team or Arizona to beat this team or BYU to beat this team, I don't have any problem with you playing that card if that's what you want to do. It doesn't make you any less of a Tech fan. I think we've talked about this. We've never really been like big conference guys, but that's kind of you've almost been forced to. Not that whoever we root for is going to matter. Right. However, us telling the story of your conference and all that, because I think that folks in the SEC shove it down everybody's throat, including the 4-letter network, that everybody pushes back and gets sick of it, and that's why a lot of people are rooting against the SEC as much as anything in this conference. I mean, in this NCAA tournament. Yeah,
no doubt about that. And I'm fine with going through the SEC if we have to. Florida, recent postseason history, check it for yourself. Arkansas, don't check that recent history. That's not one we're really investing in having any translated properties, at least personally speaking. And hey, don't count out the Terrapins, especially if we're all getting 3 steps. I don't know what the approach is there, so anything can happen depending upon how many steps you got going this round. So looking forward to seeing how it plays out. As for how you got here, Chris, I am kind of curious. I'd like to pitch this thought at you that actually was pitched to me by our man Zach, a Matador Mobster, asking a question about the path so far for Texas Tech. And I've also seen this within our YouTube comments. I've seen it out there on X. I think they call it chirping. Tweet, tweet. It's happening. The path for Texas Tech, is it really been an enchanted one? Zach's asking about, should we actually offer any apologies for the way we got here? First, today's episode brought to you by Nissan and the Armada Team of the Week, brought to you by our friends at Nissan and the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Each week, our Locked On College basketball experts are picking one team that stands apart. From top-seeded stars to the unexpected upsets, these teams have the sheer power needed to move forward. This week's Armada and Clear Cut Team of the Week, especially since it's all due respect to Arkansas week on Locked On Texas Tech, the Arkansas Razorbacks. Despite losing their first 5 SEC games, the Hogs fought their way through the most rugged conference in college basketball to not only make the tournament, but knock off back-to-back national champion and Hall of Fame coaches en route to the Sweet 16. When it comes to the Nissan Armada, they do say go forth and conquer, and that's exactly what they say. The Razorbacks have done. Oink, oink. It's clear that our team of the week is out here ready to conquer the road ahead with confidence, just like you can in the all-new Nissan Armada or any of Nissan's outstanding vehicles. So take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, or Pathfinder and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Should we actually offer any apologies for the way we got here? And I just like to toss it up to you. And I would recall that both of us, prior to this thing kicking off, I think expressed thoughts to suggest not so mad at this roll of the dice. This path, this bracket, there's some angles to it that we like. So within that context, and now seeing how it's played out, Chris, are you willing to offer up an apology for how we've arrived here?
And let me ask this question aloud here. Is this Is this because of who you've played or who you're
We're
about
talking
to play,
mid-majors. We're
or all
talking
the above?
double-digit seeds. We're talking,
Okay.
all the it's
So
Sweet
are
16.
you asking me if I should apologize for, first of all, the SEC peed all over itself in Wichita? Okay. And Drake had poor Missouri seeing sideways. It was an embarrassment how deeper, bigger, more talented on paper than Missouri was than Drake. And those Drake boys, I mean, they embarrassed Missouri in front of their home crowd, mind you. So I guess I would love to know what I'm supposed to apologize for, because when you hang your Sweet 16 banner up there, and Arkansas will do the same thing because you've made it this far, you don't put, there's no asterisks on any of those to suggest, well, here's who you beat. No, that's not how it works, man. And what am I supposed to do? Hey guys, I know the bracket lays out this way, but could you give somebody else to us instead, tougher, that everybody else thinks would be worthy of us beating? No, man, that's not how it works. This is sports. You earned a 3 seed, okay? So you get to beat Wilmington, and then Drake embarrassed Missouri, okay? They embarrassed them. I watched it up close. It was 10 feet away from me. Bennett Sturts did whatever he wanted to, okay? Whatever he wanted to. And the coach just sat there with his hands in his pockets and didn't say anything. And they put on a press, and they went on a 10-0 run, and they got the game. It was cute for about 2 minutes. And then Drake just was running circles around everybody. So I'm not going to apologize for Drake winning that when they earned it. And they were picked to beat Texas Tech by many folks out there. They were a great story. They're really well coached. Their coach is now moving on to Iowa because he's such a good coach. So no, I'm not and I would be really frustrated with any Texas Tech fan out there that was legitimately trying to apologize for any sort of path here. And I hope you continue to take advantage of it. Give me another double-digit seed. Oh wait, there's Arkansas, the underdog. We'll get to that in a minute. But no, I'm not apologizing. That's an embarrassing topic to even engage in. And I saw some Utah fan trying to have fun at Tech's expense out there, and somebody sent it to me, and I'm like, please don't anybody take the bait on this. Don't engage. Don't engage with these kinds of people. It's not worth your time, man. Don't punch down because right now Utah is looking up at everybody in football and in basketball. So anyway, with that, I turn it back to you, Coach Cowan.
We're getting chirped by Utah? What? I didn't see that.
Yeah, come on, man.
But I'm not going to take that bait. I'm going to take your advice.
Okay, yeah.
Give me all the double digits. Give me all the sisters of the poor. I'll ride that train all the way to the Natty if I need to. Don't mind. Where's St. Joe's? Where's Florida Gulf Coast? Where's any of them? Bring them back around. Actually, St. Joe's, well, the one I'm referencing mistakenly, we already faced, so don't bring them back around this year. But you get the idea. I'll take them all. I don't care. It's how the bracket works out. And as you also pointed out, you earned your way to this positioning in the bracket via the regular season in the toughest conference, arguably, in America. So,
I mean, so what I'm hearing is you're supposed to apologize to because Missouri lost, and now you're supposed to potentially apologize because St. John's lost. And like, what are we playing these games for? Like, that's the beauty of this tournament and the sport. It's very unpredictable. That there's zero for anybody to apologize for. And this thing is all about matchups. You could be a much higher seed, like as in I should say lower seed, like a 1, 2, or 3, and you could face the wrong kind of matchup. That's like an 8 or a 9 or a 10 or whatever it may be, and you get got. Okay, I mean, it's just these things work. I mean, no apologies, man, none. I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. We're here, and you earn the right to be here for all the things that you've been putting on the floor and putting the points on the board, and on it goes. So no apologies. Sorry.
No. The Lord works in mysterious ways. I hope the pews are all full out here in West Texas this time of year, and we're riding whatever gravy train all the way to the big prize. Hey, you did make me think of something, though, before we move on, and I want to move on to a semi-peak, not a full, semi-peak at Arkansas in just a moment. But the field of this Sweet 16, I guess a lot's being made of it and what it's boiled down to conference-wise, and I think you don't have anybody lower than whatever number. Was it 11 or something like that for the first time since 2007 or whatever benchmark they chose to
seed wise.
Yes.
Yeah. Because
you're boiled down to only 4 conferences, something like that. problem, no problem, just a one-off case-by-case thing? Is there any portal or NIL element to this? Because people want to ascribe that to it as well. You been thinking about this at all? What do you make of it?
Yeah, I mean, because Arkansas is the only double-digit seed left, and we'll get into their underdog status here in a little bit, but I do think there's probably some folks connecting some dots, whether it be portal or NIL. I think this is a lot more NIL, I would say portal related than it is NIL. Okay. And what I mean by that is nobody has to be young anymore. You can go get old. You're young by choice. If your roster is young and this is what you wanted to do, that was your choice to go that route. Like, you don't have to be that way. We graduated everybody, or everybody left to the NBA. And so we're just kind of, no, this was your decision to be young and talented or whatever, if that's what you want. I mean, John Calipari, he's playing 3 freshmen regularly, and that was his choice. He's even said, I've backed off of that. There was a time in the national title game where I think he started 5 freshmen. He's like, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not. We've had to adapt. I mean, you've got the Maryland situation that we'll see up close and personal, and they're pretty young as well. And so I think there's probably a lot more portal correlation to this than NIL, but I just don't know if we can paint this scenario with a broad brush yet. I don't know if we've seen enough here to say this. I mean, was NC State last year going all the way to the Final Four? Is that NIL or portal related? I don't know. I mean, they were from a Power 4 league, but they pulled off a minor miracle getting to that point. Just got hot, and I'm not ready to say too much along those lines just yet.
They had pulled off a minor miracle just getting to the tournament. It was like a double down.
I agree. And you may never see that again. But any coach in America that is sitting there, as bad as it may look for you in any conference tournament, you can point to that example for all time going forward and going, it can be done, because it has been done.
I don't really make of it. I think you're absolutely right when you say it's too early to make a blanket statement. And I would say, I got to be honest, I'm not all that sentimental about these things. If it was the signaling of some new future where it was only this, I don't care. These are 16 best teams in the nation that have won all the games to get to this point. Fine. How are they assembled? Honestly, don't care. What teams was it to their detriment? Don't really care, which, by the way, shout out to New Mexico. Lost to JT Top, and they're right back there on the cusp of the Sweet 16. So it's not like it was all curtains. And I know they didn't get the win, but they were toe-to-toe with Michigan State. But at the end of the day, I mean, we like to see underdogs and unexpected things happen, Chris. I think that's part of the excitement. But there are underdogs in every set of games this weekend as well. And improbable things could also happen still rolling forward. It doesn't just have to be the Mount St. Mary's of the world who are pulling those things off. And I think there's always been like some appetite for that stuff at a certain point in the tournament. And then there's a real lack of that appetite as we get into real hardware chasing in the Elite Eight and Final Four. All right, George Mason, make room for somebody else.
Oh,
you know what I'm saying? I've always kind of got that vibe too.
Yeah, I mean, Florida Atlantic. I mean, there's so much. That's happened, and I just am not ready to say that those folks are just done. I mean, that's not reality in my opinion.
Yeah, we'll see. And if you're rooting for them out there, best of luck, because I do think the odds are dwindling, but maybe there's a shift also in this revenue sharing era that will alter some things that could signal another type of ebb or flow. We'll have to wait and see as we get through this calendar year. All right, before we get out of here, we mentioned it a couple of times. Semi-peek at the Arkansas Razorbacks, and a question or a scenario that's kind of hard to swallow. John Calipari as an underdog.
First, today's episode brought to you by Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site made for skilled trades with Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. And their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from more than 400 top brands, you're going to find exactly what you need, delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trademaster program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage, and now it's your turn to take your business to the next level. Join the Trademaster program today at supplyhouse.com/TM. That's supplyhouse.com/TM, and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with only a few clicks. Plus, use our promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's SH5 at supplyhouse.com.
Scenario that's kind of hard to swallow. John Calipari as an underdog. I know what the number says regarding the matchup, Chris, but it's still kind of hard to think about a guy like this as playing to that narrative, sort of. So, number one, are you really thinking this is out there as far as him in this situation? Is he embracing it? Is it something that is just kind of crafted around him? What do you make of it?
Yeah, well, I think he legitimately at some level is an underdog. The fact that, and then there's some context here you need to offer up, but like the fact that they've made it this far is not anything anybody was expecting. Nobody was predicting this. They beat Kansas and St. John's to get to this point. This was a team that started out the SEC 0-5. It's been well documented, and then they had some injuries along the way. And, Texas Tech's dealt with the injuries and all that, but they've been without, a leading scorer for about a month now. And they've a lottery pick and Boogie Flan that just returned recently against St. John's there. And so, but when you're the Kentucky head coach, you're always the favorite, whether that's reality or not. You're always the favorite. You've got more resources than anybody. You've got all their tradition. You've got all the stuff. And I think in some ways it's exhausting. And then when you get bounced by Oakland, you don't make it out of the first weekend of the tournament there for a stretch. It is quite annoying to the Big Blue Nation there. And I think he'd had enough, and I think they'd had enough. And it was an unceremonious kind of departure. It was kind of this weird, split. Where I think it was just as much Kentucky's as it was Coach Calipari's decision. But there's some things that had to happen. Musselman and Andy Enfield had to move around a little bit, and with SMU and with USC and with there's just a lot of things that had to happen. And so he lands at Arkansas, and like here's the thing about the underdog part. So like here's the context that you need to hear. There's people that will tell you that their roster costs between $7 to $10 million this year. They are unbelievably talented. So anybody sitting here saying like, "Oh, well, poor Cal," like, Arkansas, it's not the little engine that could, man. Or anything close to it.
It's the chicken engine that could.
Yeah. Tyson chicken, as a matter of fact. But as it relates to this particular team and what they had to deal with to get to this point, this is unexpected. And so I think he's embracing it and enjoying hey man, let's just see how far we can take it. I think he's refreshed by not having necessarily the expectations. Because, there was a lot being said and written when they were 0-5 in the league and like, oh, it's passing by. And all the Kentucky fans are going, ha ha. And then he rolls into Rupp Arena in front of a hostile, sold-out crowd, and they walked out of Rupp Arena as a winner. And he got to go, appreciate all of you, and he got to take the high road, and away he went. So, but he is an underdog right now. I think if you'll see people talking about who's got the best chances of the 16 teams left to win the title and to win 4 more games, you're going to see Arkansas ranked at or near the bottom of that list. And I wouldn't disagree with that, but it doesn't mean that they're going to be an easy out. It doesn't mean that Texas Tech can beat them on Thursday night. But an underdog, yeah, and it's a new role for him, and I think he's kind of relishing it and embracing it, and I think it's freeing to him a bit because it's he's getting to see how the other side lives. Even though he's making $8 million a year, even though his team is making as much, if not more than that, totally. And so, yeah, it's underdog with a bit of a caveat to it.
He ain't taking over Vanderbilt. We all, I think, understand that. I mean, the Hogs have a big fan base. They got cash. They got chicken cash. They got wholesale cash, whatever. They got all kinds of flowing down there. And they've got some history with the program, obviously. So it's not to go back to the aforementioned Little Sisters of the Poor, certainly not that. No. But it is kind of crazy to think about. I mean, such a notorious figure like he has been. He's been at the steering wheel or the helm of a national title or bust ship year in and year out for a long time. He was the preeminent figure in the one and done era and found some ways, maybe even against a lot of predictions, to have success in that at the highest level. So it's just kind of crazy to think about that guy being in the spot of like, well, see if we can piece it together with these boys. You know, we're just trying to drag them across the line or whatever. What it sounds like to me is an incredibly dangerous combination. To take a coach like that in a situation like this is just, he's got all the tools at his disposal, I'm sure.
Yeah. And one more point before we wrap is like, they are a major storyline here. He is a major storyline here with what's left in the tournament. The national media is gravitating toward this because of his exit. And what's so bizarre is that here he is at Arkansas, Sweet 16. Mark Pope leaves BYU, goes to Kentucky, also in the Sweet 16. And the program that Mark Pope left at BYU, also in the Sweet 16. So it's just funny how that whole thing worked. But I think it's a great spot for Texas Tech to be in. They're very much under the radar here. They just are. And it will be a lot of John Calipari on the telecast. It will be a lot of John Calipari on the lead up. Grant McCaslin's going to get asked a lot about it. And I hope it annoys the heck out of him. I hope it annoys the heck out of Texas Tech and that they used it because you're not going to be talked about anywhere near as much as the Hogs and their head coach. And I understand it. I get it. But that doesn't mean that's not going to be a good thing for you too. I think that you can embrace that part of it and use it to your advantage a bit.
Man, gotta hope so. That's crazy to think about, that coaching shuffle you describe and the success those programs are enjoying. It's like every time there's a shuffle, everybody just winds up in a better situation, like Tech in Texas. I mean, well, okay, that was a bad example, but I'm sure there are some others out there. Just a wild circumstance. Chris, enjoyed it as always, man. Thanks for the insight. We're getting near to tip off. Patience is a virtue, so I'm working on it. I'm having a hard time. I got to tell you, I am chomping and champing at the bit. So looking forward to the next one.
Hey, man, appreciate it. We'll talk a lot of Hogs when we resume next, and kind of look forward to that and kind of what that game looks like in between the lines there. So anyway, appreciate it, Cowan. Nobody out there better be apologizing for nothing, man. If we catch you apologizing to anybody for your route to the Sweet 16, I'm going to furrow my brow and maybe judge you a bit. So don't do that. Just say no to apologizing for routes to the Sweet 16.
Wholeheartedly endorse that message. And that wraps up the semi-Arkansas peak. A full look in all their Hog glory, which I hope at some point in the next 48 hours means a John Daly tribute segment. But we'll have to stay tuned to find out, because when I'm thinking Arkansas, I am thinking about Big JD. So maybe just put that on your list and make sure you're subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you don't miss something like that. Thanks to the Everydayers for always being out there, and shout out to the Matador Mob. Make sure you're hitting the show notes for a link to a free 14-day trial. That's your direct line to Chris and myself with one-on-one text sent straight to your phone. For Chris, I'm Casey. Thanks as always for the time, and we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.